proudest day and the proudest time in the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all was said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.
Welcome along to Krunching Gears, the rally podcast. You know, what can we say? It's the quiet time, there's not much happening on the stages, but we're going to keep talking. You know, we had the absolute pleasure of catching up with Becs Williams and Luke Barry. Connor, like, what can we say? You know, two ultimate professionals talking to us.
Look, it was a chance for us to learn something.
Yeah, don't know what we probably should have learned more. We should have listened more to the talking. But no, two consummate professionals, and in world rallying. There's no other nice way of putting it. That's just what they are. The cream of the crop. Like Becs, the ultimate pro, and if we could just sit back and just enjoy what she says. Like, she is a wordsmith. Her voice is synonymous with the sport. It's a pleasure listening to her.
Look, I could sit and listen to Becs for hours, if not days, and do when WRC Plus is on. But just the stories that Becs has, the knowledge that Becs has, she can bring us the personality. She can tell us what goes on behind the scenes. So it's lovely to sit down and to hear, her thoughts and her views on basically the WRC or the sport we love.
Yeah, and look, he seems to be one of those guys that's been about for the last 30 years, and we forget he's not even turned 30 yet. Like, for somebody so young, he has such knowledge.
Listen, it's incredible what he knows. Really is, deeply versed in the sport, knows his stuff inside out, not afraid to give an opinion, and most of the times it's a really accurate and knowledgeable opinion as well, and value what Luke has to say and contribute when you read his writings, or you hear him on a podcast or whatever, not just our own. So very well informed guy, and a lot of time for him.
Yeah, and he, like, the two of them, so given of their time. This was recorded in the days of Christmas, and like 101 things to do. We all have 101 things to do in the days leading up to Christmas, but to take the time out and come and talk to us and give us their thoughts, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, look, again, as you say, it's a busy time of the year. They were very, very giving, very generous of the time, and it was lovely to hear, I suppose, reflect on the year that we've had in 23 and looking ahead to what's coming in 24.
Yeah, I think we'll catch up with, that'll be, first of all, we'll hear from Becs. It's been a difficult year in some many ways.
It has been a very difficult way. I think a difficult year in one way in particular. Before we can even really look back at anything that happened in 2023 competitively WRC. And I've been finding this myself a lot in the last week when I've been thinking back across the scene. I can think of one thing and one thing only, and that is losing Craig Breen. And I know, difficult to start our conversation on a tough topic, but Craig was so close to so many of us, and I still can't believe right now that he's not here anymore. And I think it's been a really, really hard thing to deal with for obviously his family, his close friends, for everyone in the rallying community to have lost such a lovely guy, such a great character. It's the one thing that stands out from the season for me. I can think of nothing else, especially this time of year. I think when you're drawing loved ones closer and someone's missing, and for many people who have lost someone, they understand what that feels like. And I really feel for the whole Breen family at this time of year in particular. Miss Craig every day. I miss the texts, the random texts he used to send me about burning his mashed potato. How can you burn mashed potato, Kevin? I still don't quite understand. I'm never going to know now, am I? But I miss all those little things about him, as well as obviously the competition and seeing all the joy from that side. I miss miss the friendship, miss the randomness of the stuff we used to send each other. And yeah, it's a difficult one to look back on.
Yeah, because I know you're not supposed to have, favourites or whatever, but there was always like a sparkle in your eye and a sparkle in his, and there was a bit of devilment as well.
Yeah, you're not supposed to have favourites. And genuinely, when I'm commentating, when I'm doing my job, I don't. Everyone's like, oh, you want Elvyn Evans to win because you're Welsh. And yeah, okay, we're from the same country. I like Elvyn a lot, but I love competition. And, I want to see, best person win out there. But Craig, it was, I don't know, it was something different. I think probably because of the way we met, and the friendship that we had. And I always felt that I was looking out for him. And whenever I would see his mum, Jackie, she'd always say, oh, look out for my boy, and thank you for looking out for my boy. And, we know he's okay when you're around. And it did feel like that. I always felt like I had a little casting eye over him. And he was, he's a cheeky guy, and he was great company. Even though I felt like I was looking out for him, I always thought he was the same age as me. I never thought that he was younger than me in any way, shape, or form. And he was many, many years younger than I am. But you never felt that difference with Craig, because he, appealed to such a vast spectrum of people. His love of 80s music, I think, is one of the things that made him seem older. And he had such a massive love of 80s music. It was touching and quite embarrassing at times when he would, belt out the old, Bonnie Tyler or whatever, when it came on the radio. If we were in the car together, he did love his music, and 80s in particular. And one of the things we always wanted to do, and it's such a regret now that we didn't do it, we almost did it at Rally Finland one year, which was to sit Craig and Jari Matti down together. Because Jari Matti's a huge 80s music buff as well. So is Craig. And we thought, put them together and we could just, get them kind of firing off competition questions against each other. And we almost did it at Rally Finland maybe 3 years ago, I think. And I can't remember what had happened, but we couldn't do it. And I think that would have been epic. I think I probably would have gone with a Jari Matti win there, maybe, because his knowledge of everything was just incredible. But Craig was pretty good on his 80s as well, so I think it would have been close.
And does their driving ability match their singing ability?
Well, they're very, very different driving abilities. Definitely, very harshly different styles. And I think Jari Matti would be saying that he is definitely the wilder of the two, if you were to compare them in that sense. But there were many, actually, when you think about it now, they were quite similar in their passion for the sport, because we know how much Jari Matti loves his rallying, and that's all Craig knew and loved. I remember him telling me once, it was a funny incident that we had, I can't remember which rally we were at, but a New Zealand journalist had turned up. It was the year of the Rugby World Cup, so we're talking now 4 years. Was it Rugby World Cup? Yeah, it was. Or maybe it was the build-up to the Rugby World Cup. Anyway, Ireland had just beaten the All Blacks, basically, which is a huge thing, for Ireland to beat the All Blacks, massive. So this Kiwi journalist sits down with Craig. I'm at the table as well. And he said, first thing I've got to say, Craig, is, congratulations on the win. And Craig's a bit like, what's he talking about? What are you talking about? Thinking, have I won something? And I knew exactly what he meant. So I was like, the rugby, Craig. Oh, right. We won something, have we? I was like, he's beaten the All Blacks. Oh, he said, if it doesn't have an engine, I'm not interested. And I just remember sitting there going, oh, how could he not know Ireland beat the All Blacks? But he was that, if it didn't have an engine, he really wasn't the least bit interested. And yeah, him and Jari Matti very similar in that sense, in that passion, for motorsport, for rally in particular, was so huge. And it's what I think really appealed to everyone out there who watched him, listened to him, is just his absolute joy and his love of the sport, which it's a big miss for us now, because it infuriates me sometimes that people say we have no characters in rallying anymore. And you think, well, we lost a huge one this year and you didn't appreciate him when he was here. So open your eyes, people, and look, because there are characters around. You're just not seeing it the way you should.
Mm-hmm. And look, to bring you in, What would you say Craig's legacy is, or is it too early to tell, or you know, is there a definitive thing we can say about him?
I don't think it's too early, sadly. I think with all of these things, naturally there comes a point where, as Beck said, for me as well, I didn't know Craig particularly well, but it's still very hard to believe what happened. Doesn't feel like it. You do kind of just sort of feel like you're going to see him somewhere, but we know unfortunately that's not the case. But I think the thing that really warms my heart now is the formation of the Craig Breen Foundation, which is effectively an idea Craig had himself. He'd already made steps to try and support the next up and coming breed of Irish drivers. Even a few days before the accident, he was there at a test day helping Molly, completely a surprise and a completely off his own bat. Nobody asked him to do it, and I think that's a very great encapsulation of the man as well. Just his passion for rally went far beyond his own career and his own interest. It was for everyone, but he was just the most giving soul I think you can imagine, as that typified. But it's little things like, as Beck said, we're not meant to have favorites, and we don't have favorites, but you get to a stage end and you felt like you'd sat in that car with Craig. And I think that's the thing that really set him apart from others, because none of us here know what it's like to be competing in a WRC car, Rally 1 car. We don't have the skills or the money to do that, but we felt like we were Paul Nagel for those however many kilometers that were there. It was a really special gift that he had to be able to relate to so many people. And it's difficult if you're at that level to truly relate to everybody else, because you are kind of held up on a pedestal with everybody, and so you would be. But Craig was always just Craig. He was never Craig Breen, the WRC star. It was Craig Breen, the man, the driver. He was just Craig Breen. I've kind of gone off on a slight tangent there, Connor, but
I think it's great. I'm enjoying it. Like, keep going.
But he was, yeah. I shouldn't come across all preachy or offering advice, but I think if there was anything we could all learn from Craig, it's just to appreciate what you've got and enjoy what you have in front of you. He was always brilliant at that. Even last year when things were difficult, you always sensed that there was catch him at the right moment. He was still Craig. You could see within him, and for that, I'm just so glad that he, and I guess we all got to see Sweden this year as well. It was, I remember, I can't remember what stage number it was, but it was the Bratby stage. We all know the famous clip he gave Seb Marshall, but I found myself watching that back on repeat just afterwards, because I just felt such a warm sensation watching it. I could feel the joy radiating into me with what he was having, and it was just so nice to see a driver back to the level he should have been at. So it's very hard to put into words. I think, as somebody told me, and embarrassingly can't remember who it was, but I'm sure Ireland will find another world-class rally driver, but you won't be able to find another Craig Breen. I think that's the ultimate way to put it. He was one of a kind. But I'm really happy to see that, to go back on myself and loop, I'm really happy to see that the investment is being put in to help the youngsters, because it's what Craig ultimately wanted to happen. So I think it's brilliant we've managed to get that system on board. And I guess the ultimate way to pay tribute to him would be to get another driver back to where Craig was, because that's what he would have loved most to see himself.
And Beck's, sitting in the commentary box and goes to stage end, and like, I'm sure there was an anticipation. What's Craig going to come out with next?
There always was, good or bad, actually, but more the good, especially when you knew he had a good time and you could see the splits. You knew it was either going to be third, second, or fastest. You didn't know what was going to happen, but I still remember the stage end, actually, when things had gone wrong in Rally Sweden last year. And, they'd gone off pretty early on, and they'd come back and restart rules. And we were on board with them at the start of a stage, and we could see that they were looking, both Paul and Craig were smiling and looking to the side. And then they started laughing. So they're looking at something in the field that's adjacent to them. And Craig says something like, "Oh, they look like they're enjoying that." And we're thinking, what? We can't see because we've only got on board. What the hell are they talking about? And they were just meandering then through the stage. They weren't setting any real pace. I think it was Sunday evening. And, the only thing we were talking about in commentary was what on earth were they talking about, obviously, at the start of the stage. So they get to the end, and I think it was Marshall again. And he was struggling, I think, at that point actually with what to ask them, because they had nothing to fight for. They were just waiting for the power stage. So he said, "Oh, forget about the time." He said, "We're more interested in what on earth was going on at the start." And he said, "Oh, you saw that, did you?" He said, "Oh, a marshal was eating a sandwich in the field at the side of us, and it was a big baguette, and they were really chewing down on it. And Paul and I thought, oh, that looks really nice, but we wouldn't like it if it had butter on it, because neither of them like butter." And it was just like the raw honesty of him saying about the sandwich, but even saying about the butter as well. It's because he was so real. It was always a real answer that you got from Craig, be it good or bad. He was always real. And I think, like I said before, that was why he had so many fans around the world. He appealed to so many people because he was this down-to-earth chap who was doing extraordinary things in a rally car. And you could go up and talk to Craig in the service park, anywhere you found him, and he would have a chat with you. And sometimes to his detriment as well, because he'd talk to anyone. And actually very similar to Jari Matti in this sense. They're both very similar characters. You'd have to be pulling Craig away from people. He'd be stuck with someone for 30 minutes while they've told him their life story. And he's, nodding away, and he's taking it all in, and you're like, come on, let's go. But he would never, break them off and say, oh, I've got to go. He was always like that. He loved chatting to people. He loved chatting to rally people. And yeah, getting him through a service park was quite a difficult job, because he would happily talk to anyone and everyone. And I can't express how much he's missed. I love talking about him because it feels like, we're keeping him alive in that sense, because we're talking about him so much. And I could wax lyrical for the entire of this podcast on Craig alone. I mean, I've spent the past few days looking back through pictures of the year videos, and I've sent some off to Jackie that I found of Craig, just random stuff we've done together over the years. And there's a little video which I think I'm going to post this week of him when we were in New Zealand. Again, it's a rugby thing. We went to New Zealand his first time, and first day that we got there, we all went to Eden Park, which is the big rugby stadium in Auckland, to watch the All Blacks play Australia. Huge game. We had VIP passes. We met the team. It was incredible. Craig, it all just went over the top of his head because he didn't really understand what was going on. But before we actually got there, we had something called the All Black Experience, so it's Craig, Aaron was there as well, Paul, Scott, and Elvyn. We all got All Black shirts with our names on, and we got a chance to kick the ball over the post in like this huge room, and we learned all about the All Blacks. So Craig had a go at kicking. Never kicked a rugby ball in his life, and he kicked it, and he managed to wedge it in the wall, which was at the back. It was all like a digital kind of thing, and he's just laughing his head off because he, out of everyone, has managed to wedge the ball. And I found that the other day, and it just brought me joy just looking at him laughing. So I sent it off to the family, because anything I find, it's like you send it off. And Jackie likes to receive anything if she hasn't seen it before, because obviously, she wants to see as much of him as possible. And I think we all do. Like Luke mentioned, just rewatching that Rally Sweden joy, it brings us joy watching that. And coupled, there's sadness there, but my God, Craig knew how to live, and he lived to the fullest. And there's no better evidence than that stage end footage of him laughing away and truly enjoying driving and life. And I think, that's the way we should remember him.
For sure. So Craig, wherever you're at, keep the smile there and keep looking down on us and looking after us, So, but I suppose
absolutely. And stay away from the rugby balls.
That's for sure. 2023, Kalle Rovanperä, what can we say? This guy, 23 years of age, a double world champion. It's unbelievable. I was chatting to Mark Higgins the other day, and he says whenever he was coming up through, you had to be in your 30s and 40s to get into a works team. And then by the time he got the age, it was suddenly then, you had to be in your 20s. He has tore up that again. You have to be in your early 20s, late teens to be a future world champion. It's unbelievable what he's achieved.
I think he's torn up the rule books in many, many different ways. with what he's done with his career and also what he's doing now by taking a step back. There's no rule book written that says you have to stay in this championship for 10 years and rack up wins like they're going out of fashion. And I'm really glad that he has been brave enough to say, actually, I want to do something else with my life, as well as doing some rallying. There are other things I want to pursue, and being bold enough to go off and do it. And actually, when I recorded the Backstories podcast with him, which was the year that he won the championship, but in the May of that year, I think, so well before he won the championship, he said in that podcast, he said, I'm not going to be like other drivers. He said, I'm not going to be here for 10 plus years. He said, there are other things I want to do with my life. My family, my friends are really important to me, and I don't want to let that slide. And I remember finishing the podcast and straight away ringing Jared, who looks after all our communications and website and everything. And he's my contact with the podcast. And I rang him and I said, he's not going to be around long. I said, from what I've just heard, he is not going to be around long. And it was like, oh, okay, let's see. And, lo and behold, it's played out. I mean, he's had a great season. It took him a little while to get going. And I think that played on his mind a little bit at the start of the year, that the wins weren't coming straight off the back. He did say at the end of the season that he tried very much to shut out the negative comments that he saw online. And we've got to remember, he's still a young guy. He is still reading those comments online. He's still looking and trawling through stuff, maybe not as much as he was, but like I said, he's only human. You're going to do that. And he said he tried to ignore journalists. He ignored the written press, what people were saying about him, and just focused on himself. I think he's extraordinary. I like him as a person. His character is really interesting for me, because he's still very young in many ways, but also far more mature than others who are way older than him in others. For example, in Sweden this year, sorry, Luke, I'm talking loads. I'm going to let you chip in straight after this bit, I promise. In Sweden this year, when was it? No, sorry, it wasn't this year. It would have been last year. When war broke out with Ukraine. It was last year. He said at the end of the power stage, he wasn't going to celebrate, because my thoughts are with the people in Ukraine. And I was watching it because I don't commentate on the power stage, and I cried, because it was like, wow, a full respect at 22 years of age to be able to stand there and say hugely eloquently, I've really done an injustice with what I've just said here. But to say that, to stand up in front of, world television and say that, I thought, good on you, because you're the only one to have really vocally said that throughout the weekend. Not that anyone else had to. It was all happening as we were in Sweden. But he was the one that made the point of doing it. And I thought that was huge. A lot, and I respect what he's done, taking a partial season.
Yeah, because look, this is as Beck said there, he's not conventional. He doesn't, he doesn't play by the rules as such. Yeah, he's very much his own man. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we talked about characters earlier with Craig, and I think Kalle is actually one of those that's potentially quite. Is misunderstood too strong a word? I don't know, but I think a lot of people perhaps at home don't fully get the full Kalle, because when he's in rally mode, he's very focused. He does his thing, but there are the odd snippets here and there where I think it's quite obvious the kind of guy he is. He is, as you said it there, he's his own man. He's fun. I remember distinctly the stage end, and I love a stage end comment, as you can maybe tell, but the stage end in Chile this year when he was stuck behind Gregoire Munster, and he made this incredible line in comparison to Mario Kart, which none of us would have thought was coming, but it just came out of nowhere. But Kalle, he's had, everybody knows how early he started his career. I think he's possibly had potentially, and I could be forgetting somebody here, but I can't think of many drivers that have had as much hype at such a young age as Rovanperä did. I think even before we'd reached WRC, we'd all decided he was going to be a world champion. It was that kind of level of pressure almost, I guess. So he's got to deal with that for his entire life. And as we said, like he's 23 years old, but if you're put into that situation, it's as if he's like 10, 15 years older in reality than he actually is, because he's missed out on all these things that you would normally do as a youngster. I've certainly had my fair share of things that I wouldn't be doing now in a professional environment that you get out of your system when you're younger, because it's what you do. You have that chance to do it, but Rovanperä hasn't. And I can't remember when it was now, maybe a couple of weeks ago, on his Instagram story. It really hit home just what a kind of chilled guy he is. I think he was playing Call of Duty for the morning, and then he ended up at McDonald's with his Porsche in the evening. And I just thought, you know what? Good on you, Kalle. You're living life. I love this from you, because he can do what he likes, and he's earned that position to do what he likes. In terms of the driving this year, I think we did see a very different side to his approach last year, and it would be wrong to say that he had it easy, because he still had to do the job that he had. But he's been the first to admit that the competition wasn't quite as strong to start the year, probably unexpectedly so. Maybe not so much. We all knew about Hyundai struggles, but Elvyn was a bit of a slower start to Rally One Life, so Kalle kind of had a chance to break away. But this year, there was 4 of them, sort of 5 if you count Ogier in there for a bit, that were all properly fighting for it. And it was just a matter of, I think it was 11 points separated 5 of them at one point of the year. It was that close.
Yeah.
He really had to dig deep to find that advantage, which he managed to do. I think it was a potentially very underrated campaign for him, because I think the problem is when you're this good, people start expecting stuff from you. But the fact he's still doing it is incredible for me. And as you said, Becs, I think any driver should be entitled to whatever they like. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have choices. But if anybody's earned a bit of a break, for me, it is Rovanperä.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. He does want a bit of a break from it, I think, but he also wants to explore this drifting side of things. I know he had to miss, I think, 3 rounds this year because of clashes with WRC, and who knows, maybe he'll do the full championship next year. What else could he potentially do as well? I think that's what's exciting about him, is the potential. We know he's a rally champion, a double world rally champion, but what else can he go out there and achieve? And also something else to note as well from a human side of things, we've never had a champion this young. And what happens in your mind when you have such success at such a young age? I mean, there's got to be, as Luke mentioned, that the pressure that's on you, the expectation that is on you to deliver. How do you process all of that? I thought he was brave to come out and, say the things he did about, it is a lot mentally to deal with. And it absolutely is. You've got the travel, the competition, but the expectation on your shoulders, I think is pretty huge. And plus, you've got to remember, he doesn't live in Finland permanently, but he can't really go anywhere in Finland without being recognised. So, you've got that element of going home and everyone knows who you are. It's difficult, I'm sure, at that age to deal with that kind of intensive pressure on your shoulders from people looking in at your life. I read some of the comments on his post, and you always, there was a lot of really positive ones, and people were really understanding and, looking forward to you back in the full season, but also looking forward to seeing what else you're going to do. But there were also some people who were like, I want you to entertain me, dance monkey. Why aren't you doing a full season? And you were like, Jesus, people. So yeah, good for him.
Yeah, because you're almost like, with social media now, you're almost a performing puppy. Do another trick, and this is the sad thing about it, that people expect things that's just not humanly possible. Like at 23 years of age, he wants to go out and have some fun.
Yeah, and I think fun is big on the list. But like Luke said, from his Instagram stories, he's doing some very normal stuff at the moment, which is great. I mean, even kind of in the middle of the season last year, he'd come back from a test and he was at home watching Friends, and he put that up on Instagram. He's massively into Friends, and you're like, yeah, he's just a normal 20, in his 20s doing 20-year-old things. I can remember that dim and distant past. Luke is still in this. Luke, you still in your 20s? You are, aren't you?
I am
You're
still in my 20s, but
young.
Well, I'm at that point in life where I'm struggling to accept that there's people achieving things that are younger than me. So Calle's not helping in that regard at all. It's quite exceptional.
Yeah.
Wait till you get to your age.
Yeah, I'll make no further comment on that one, Kevin. It'll be smarter for me to not say anything at this point.
But like, I think Sébastien Ogier has shown what a part program can do. Like, it may be stretching the realms of possibility that Rovanperä could defend his title, but he'll certainly dictate the direction in which the title could go in 2024.
I think it'll be interesting to see how many rallies he does, because at this point we don't know how full the calendar will be. We don't know if there'll be a scenario where it's a pure seat share with Ogier, or if there's a time where they might both do the same event. These are all things that we'll find out in due course, but you're right, it's an interesting one. Technically speaking, there is nothing stopping Rovanperä becoming a 3-time world champion next year. It's a very bizarre concept, and it would take a lot of things to go wrong for others, but if he does enough, and you've got to assume he's going to be performing extremely well, given A, he's Kalle Rovanperä, B, he's refreshed, and C, he's not going to be lumbered with the disadvantage of being first on the road on the difficult rallies. So, as you said, we saw with Ogier this year, that incredible scenario where he was essentially a championship contender despite missing a couple of the first few rallies. So that's the benefit you can have by being in a different game, I guess, to the others. And that will always raise its own certain debates of, is this right for the championship, all this kind of stuff. But personally, I think it's quite an entertaining dimension and dynamic to have there. I guess if your name is Elvyn Evans, Terry Newville, or Ott Tanak, you probably don't think the same. But it will be super interesting to see how well he performs and just what kind of version of Kalle we get. Will we see him slightly more relaxed, just more at ease with everything? I think potentially yes, and that's not to suggest that he was a massively stressed character or looked burdened this year, but I think this title campaign took quite a lot out of him. He admitted at the end of Portugal, didn't he, that he'd had, I guess, some personal things to deal with in the lead up to the 23 season and stuff. So I think, as we said before, I think he's in need of just a bit of a refresh, to sort of discover other things. And I've no doubt that no matter how well he does next year, or whoever takes the championship crown, he'll be very hard to stop Rovanperä doing it in 25. I would suspect. So he's always going to be there, isn't he?
Yeah, I think Becs, like Ogier's took the, done now the 2-part seasons, and from the outside looking in, he seems a different character now. He seems that kind of more chilled out, more relaxed vibe about him. But there's still that hard edge to him when he needs the to pull in the belts and go to get that extra tenth that's always there still.
Oh yeah, I mean, that fighting spirit is never going to go with Ogier, never ever. I mean, it's there, and even though he is a little bit more chilled out, you're right, because he's not fighting for the championship, but when he gets a bee in his bonnet about getting a win at an event, he is full on feisty. He's back to the Ogier who was fighting for a championship. He wants to be on the top step of the podium. They all do. That's why they do it. They wouldn't be there otherwise. I've enjoyed seeing him do a partial program. Actually, I'd like him to come back and do a full-time season. But in the same breath as me saying that, I would also like to see the youngsters starting to come up as well. But for me, if drivers like Ogier and Loeb, when we saw him come back into the championship, if they've still got it, why can't we see it? What we need is more cars and more teams to be able to do that. But yeah, Ogier next year will be an interesting one. So will Rovanperä, but neither of them will win the championship.
Yeah.
So that's crushing my hopes and dreams, Becs.
Sorry, Luke. Sorry.
Good narrative
I'm going the opposite of you, haven't I? I'm going to go the opposite.
Just to add quickly on Ogier, if I can, I think for me, what's been really fascinating is as we said, all he wants to do now is win rallies, and that's always been the case. But there's no, aside from obviously Toyota's manufacturers campaign, there is nothing else that matters. So the biggest difference I've noticed with him now is if he has a puncture or a problem, that before where he was always great was salvaging results from bad weekends, but that's effectively to him meaningless now, because all he wants to do, the championship doesn't matter, the points he gets don't matter, he just wants to win rallies. So it's been quite interesting to see that play out. When he's winning, he's happy. When he's not winning, he's potentially almost more frustrated than before, because he feels like he's not getting anything out of it. If he's not winning, then he'd be as well being at home with his boy, wouldn't he? So it's been interesting to see, but I too am very glad he's still around because he's still absolutely got it. I think that's very clear.
Yeah, and he's world class in the way he conducts himself as well. He's a fantastic ambassador for the championship. You know, when Ogier speaks, everyone listens. He's got such a great way of promoting himself, the championship, Toyota. But he can also be, I know Luke loves a good stage end. He can be very fiery at stage ends when things have gone wrong. And yeah, he can be, as Luke also mentioned, really, really down in his boots when the opportunity to win has gone. Then it's like he just doesn't want to be there. We've seen that on a few occasions this year. But what I loved seeing as well at the Safari Rally was him getting his hands dirty, helping the mechanics to fix the car at the midpoint service on Saturday, and really getting into it and showing us the Ogier who is a proper competitor. You know, he will put his hand up and say he's not the best mechanic out of the group of drivers that we've got here, but he will always have a crack at things. And I love seeing that about him because he's not just the 8-time world champion who has the posh shades and, has this air of grandeur about him. He is a very real character and he gets down to the groundwork as well. And we saw that this season again. And
just sticking with Toyota just for a little bit longer, and this is probably not phrased that eloquently, but was it a comeback year for Elvyn? He didn't seem comfortable in the Rally 1 cars last year. This year he finished second in the championship. And is there a bit more of a spotlight then on Elvyn going into next year with Kalle doing a part program?
I would say something happened in Finland this year. The Finland win was important for Elvyn. Something changed from that point in the season, for me anyway, watching him onwards. The win in Croatia was hugely emotional. And I think for many of us looking back at that rally, it felt like we were all floating through it because it didn't feel real at the time, given what had just happened with Craig. That was an incredible win. But I don't know, there's something changed in him in Finland onwards. This confidence, this ease, this naturalness about his driving has returned. Whereas it seemed very forced and he seemed to be, it felt like he was overdriving sometimes. And that natural speed, which he has in abundance, wasn't showing. And he was getting frustrated by it. And then it just clicked and it changed. And I think, for me, Elvyn is the man to beat next year. He is the one that they are all going to be fighting against. I'm really interested to see how Tanak performs back at Hyundai because he was super strong with them in the latter half of the season before he left. And I think the dynamic between, I know I'm moving on to a team here, but the dynamic between him and Thierry moving into next year, I'm keen to see that as well. There's lots of interesting stuff to talk about, but for me, Elvyn is the man to beat next year.
Look, your views on Elvyn and the pressure he might face next year.
It's an interesting point about Finland that Becs made, I must say, because I hadn't really thought about it in that regard. But I guess particularly to win in Finland anyway, regardless of the context, is always a big thing for a driver. It's like the one you're going to win, isn't it? So he's done it twice now, which is huge. But that was a rally that he won himself. There was no ifs, buts, maybes, no mitigating factors, nothing. Nobody could take that from it. Elvyn won that because he was the quickest driver over the however many stages there were, which is a huge thing. And he hadn't really done that in Rally 1. I guess, as you mentioned as well, Becs, Croatia was just an extremely difficult weekend. As much as it was maximum points, it wasn't really a win. If you remember, it wasn't about the performance. Almost didn't matter, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It quickly got forgotten. But the stat I love about Elvyn this year is, and I've sat and worked it out, and it's marginal, but this was his best ever campaign in WRC statistically. In terms of, I'm not sure about stage wins, but in terms of rally wins, in terms of points scored, not even 2021 beat this one, which I think is quite telling. And again, it goes back to that expectation thing. If this is Elvyn of a few years ago, we'd all be amazed and surprised and toasting everything he'd done. But now, because we expect this level of him, it almost goes a bit unnoticed. I just hope that the pressure doesn't. Yeah, I just hope that the pressure of next year doesn't get to him too much. And I don't think it's the kind of driver that's going to look too much into what any of us are saying about his chances or anything. But he's in a unique position now because before he's had Ogier as his teammate. Then when Ogier sort of stepped back, Rovanperä came in and took the mantle. He is now, and Toyota never have a number one driver, but in terms of a drivers' championship, and I don't mean it disrespectfully towards Taka, because Taka's making great progress and he might well surprise us all, but I suspect Elvyn will be their best hope in the drivers' championship. He essentially has a clear run at it from a Toyota perspective. So it's a different dynamic for him, but I do truly believe he's up to it. Obviously, with a season, you can't sit here and predict what's going to happen with 13 rounds when it's not even 2024 yet. We're still in 23. But yeah, I think for me, the two key things are how well he starts and how well or how not well the two Hyundai drivers fare against each other. Shall we put it like that? Is that diplomatic enough?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Wow, you could be a politician.
Yeah.
I'll try.
And
I suppose then we should mention is Taka-san as well. Probably on paper it didn't look as good a year as the previous year, but in reality, I think he took a step forward, and I think Japan really showed that the pace is definitely on the up.
Japan was. I mean, you have turning points for drivers. I think when you look back over the years, and you can pick rallies where that was a turning point for this driver, this element, and I'm hoping, I really feel that Japan was a massive turning point for Taka. It was like this huge step up. Some drivers take a step. He took 4 in Japan to be able to rack up those stage wins. The confidence, the commitment in some of the worst conditions we've ever seen, rain-wise on a tarmac rally. It was insane, but he was just blinkered. He had one goal in mind. He wanted the top step, and if it hadn't been for that bloody spin, then maybe he would have been. I mean, he was lucky not to go off where Sordo and Formo were. But then it was, I want to win as many stages as possible. It's such a fantastic job. And I think that confidence boost from that rally alone, forget the rest of the season. I think you can just wipe it away, because on that rally alone, I am so excited to see what he can do in 2024. And I think everyone should be, because that is going to be a monumental confidence boost. And he is a confidence driver.
I'm actually just sad for him that he hasn't got a rally immediately after Japan to build on it on, because he hit that form and then he's got to have the break and everything. But you're completely right. I just hope, and Taka, we all are big critics of themselves, but Taka is the kind of guy that he'd find the one negative within the 99 positives. Like, he always is looking for self-improvement, which is a great trait you need to have to reach the top. But I just really sincerely hope that somebody's in his ear and saying, Taka, look what you did. You were completely fair and square, beating the world's best drivers, and to do that on us at home must have felt really special. As you said, I guess the result was just a crying shame, because I think he would have been at the very least in the fight for the win. Whether he could have got it, we can't sit here and confidently say so. But yeah, it was. I think that is a big sign. I just hope he can now find a way to perform consistently. I think is the big challenge for Taka now. There's been a few rallies this year, and Estonia and Finland were the strange ones for me. Estonia, we've not seen him that low in a while, and then he comes back in Finland 2 weeks later and grabs a podium. So he's got it. It's just finding that on every rally now will be his challenge, and I'm more than sure that he's able to do it, because the progression he's made since he first stepped up to this level was huge. If you think back to where he was 3 or 4 years ago, so I think big things ahead for him as well.
I think he's mentioned quite a few times, he's trying to find consistency in his drive. And for me, he does need that, but he also needs to find consistency of mindset, because he can plunge into these deep lows. And Aaron does a brilliant job of, boosting up and patting him on the back when he's done well. And, he's a great psychological coach alongside him. But Taka does seem to have these big highs and then these lows. He just needs to find the consistency in how he approaches things. And I think that would help as well.
Sure. And then looking across the paddock then to Hyundai, the old new partnership maybe would be the way of describing it.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be pretty special, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Will Cyril be able to keep a cap on the fireworks, or where's it going to go in 2024? It's going to be exciting watching it.
I think so, but I think one thing to mention is that Hyundai have got a killer team going into 2024. I mean, Cyril has done an epic job with that lineup, because you look at it, you've got Neuville, you've got Tanak, Lappy is back, we'll see Sordo, Mikkelsen, who, we've all been questioning, when is he going to get his opportunity again? And, I recorded a podcast with him just before he won the WRC2 title in Central European. And he said, look, I've got nothing. Before we started, I was like, honestly, now, is there anything you can tell me? Or are you talking to anyone? He's like, there is nothing at the moment. So that came together very, very quickly. Great for Andreas, but what an incredible team. And the behind the scenes work they've been doing as well, with FX de Maison, coming on board. And we didn't see him really on the last few events of the year because he was back at base in Alzenau, working for 2024. I think it's going to be fascinating to see the whole thing come together, because they have a goal in mind. It's the manufacturer's title, it's the driver's title. And right now you've got to look at it and go, well, they've put it all in place, ready to go. And it would be hard to bet against them moving forward. But like Luke says, there's 13 rounds to go. We don't know how anyone's going to play out yet. But it's exciting just to think about the battles that we could see.
Look, maybe you want to take that one on?
Yeah, I guess to echo what Beck said, in the sense of, I think Cyril's job has been immense, and it's obviously, we all know the world he's come from in Formula One. That gives him plenty of managerial experience, gives him plenty of motorsport experience, but he was the first one to admit that he's not a rally man. It's not something he's grown up with, it's something he's had to learn throughout the last year. So if you bear that in mind, and the sort of grip he's now got on this team, I think is genuinely remarkable. And he's been great value for people like me to get stories out of, I have to say. He's always got something good to say, which is always helpful.
He's a great talker. He's a
very good talker. Very bad to transcribe, though, because he talks very fast. So, Cyril, if you are listening, if you can slow down a tiny bit, that would be helpful. But yeah, I think, as you said, Bex, as well, that lineup they've got next year, all 5 of them are rally winners for a start, which is an incredible sort of stat to have in there. Yeah. You've got a very clear structure about how things are working. You've got your 2 full-time cars that are going for the Drivers' Championship. You've got the 3rd car that's being shared essentially as the wingman, the support act to help the other 2 drivers and help the Manufacturers' Championship. Everything is looking like it's now in place. And I think regardless of what's gone on at the other 2 teams, you look at this and think this is arguably Hyundai's best chance ever. You factor in the fact that M Sport's lineup's a bit weaker than it was this year. You factor in the fact that Rovanperä is taking a step back, and it starts to make your head wonder if this really could be their year next year. They've got, I'm repeating myself now, but generally it looks like they've got everything in place. We've skirted around it. I guess the challenge now is making sure they've got 2 full-time drivers that can get on well and get the best from each other, because I guess that's the fear, is friendly fire at this point now, isn't it? If they get in the way of each other and essentially not stop the result. Yeah. It'll be interesting, but it's great. We love that. It's a fantastic story to follow. And as you said, Bex, it's only been a year that Tanak's been away, which is quite weird to think about. So I remember when the press release came out in October, Spain time in 22, and to think that he's now back already is quite something, isn't it? So the world moves fast for not man.
I mean, I remember when that press release came through, because we were all at dinner on Sunday night of Rally Spain. Rally over, everything's done. And then, our communications guy got a message through saying from Hyundai, there's a press release coming out in 5 minutes' time. And it was like, what? What do you mean 5 minutes' time? He left dinner to go and type out. I'm sure, Luke, you were like, blah, 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 blah,
I was sat in the airport departures. And I thought, what you wanted there is to chill out, and then nope, there you go, laptop out, get it all sorted. So yeah, it was
exactly, and it's only been a year, and yeah, obviously, M Sport and Oit Tanak, the wins on the board, but it didn't go the way I think either of them expected. M Sport wanted more, and Oit wanted more, and it's a partnership which has come to an end now, and Hyundai's game again. And interesting moving forward. I don't think, everyone would look at Thierry and Oit and go, they've been head to head over the years. I don't think they have to get along. They just need to deliver for the team. But it's what Luke said. It's getting in the way of each other could be a bit of an issue. But as long as they deliver for the team, Cyril is not going to care whether they are giving each other a hug at the end of the rally or not.
But there seems to be almost like a ceasefire between them. There is a more friendly rapport between them. I've noticed now, like maybe there is a thaw on those the experts.
You think?
Maybe not.
Maybe not for long.
I think they've been in different teams this year. It's been different. Obviously, it's how they are with each other when they get back together. And I think maybe we put too much emphasis on it, but then it's a story to tell. And what do the drivers keep saying at the moment? Oh, you need to be telling these stories, and you tell them, and then you get shot down for you're making up stories. I don't know what to do for the best. I think we're all in that position as journalists. But to be honest, it's not something that's massively on my radar, the whole Thierry Tanak thing. I'm excited to see Tanak back with the team, because you've got to remember that back half of the season that he had with Hyundai before he left, and how incredible that was for him. I'm excited to see Tanak get back to championship title rival ways again, because I want to see them. Or I'd like to be, everyone would out there, be in the position come the end of the season, going into the final round, and we've got a 4-way battle for the title. God, I'd love that. We used to have that.
Yeah.
And not that long ago either. We can have that.
Yeah, the championship needs it. We need that. It'll help sell the championship to the wider world.
Battle, like when we've had Ogier and Elvyn, or even Rovanperä and Elvyn. It's still an exciting battle. It's up to us to tell that story, but the more the merrier. The more drivers you get with the possibility of winning, then the better. Australia, was it 2018, where we go into the final round, and there's Tanak, there's Thierry, there's Ogier, and they're all battling it out together. That was a fantastic story to tell. We need more of that.
And starting to look ahead to next year, with we've had the announcement of the restructuring of the points, and also the potential for the non-hybrid Rally Ones. What's your thoughts on how that will help maybe liven up the championship, and we move away maybe from the cruising through the early stages on a Sunday while people are saving tires for power stage? Sundays
have been the bane, I think, of the championship for a while now, because of that, because of the tyre saving. No one wants to tune into a program where they're watching drivers driving slowly. Drivers don't want to drive slowly. And the solution never was to put in an extra tyre fitting zone, because they'll just save the car instead. Like, for example, at Safari Rally, where it is a difficult terrain, or in Greece, they won't go full pelt because they'll save the car. So an extra tyre fitting zone would have made absolutely no difference whatsoever. I think the extra point scoring is interesting, and it's from a collaboration of everyone coming together to put these ideas in place, to brainstorm. The drivers, the teams, the promoter, the FIA, everyone has worked really hard to try and come up with a solution to make Sunday interesting. And there was a raft of ideas on the board for this. Do we just have one stage on a Sunday? Do we make a Sunday a far longer day? In the end, it's a points restructure, which we need to make everyone au fait with when we get to Monte Carlo, and it'll take, I'm sure, a few rallies for everyone to get up to speed with how it all works, myself included. And who knows how it's going to play out? We can't predict right now, but change is always looked on as sometimes a little bit scary, or it's good. And I think in this case, we need to see how it plays out, see how the drivers feel about it, see how the audience feel about it. Is it being reflected properly? But we needed to do something. It couldn't go on the way it was. And
look, is it going to make your job harder? You're doing your Saturday wrap-ups and then into Sunday, and it's a constantly shifting, backdrop of who's going to come out championship leader at the end of each event.
I'm going to buy Luca an abacus for his desk, so you can just move all the, Saturday points, Sunday points.
Yeah, I'll hold you to that. I might need that.
You're too young to know what an abacus is, actually, aren't you?
You're just Googling it there.
No, don't worry. I'm a man of culture. I'm aware of what an abacus is. But to be honest, I think for the pure rally fans, they'll snap onto it pretty quickly. I think and I'm being very careful not to have any preconceptions because we don't know how it's going to work in practice. My only fear is trying to explain this to people that maybe aren't so familiar with how rallying works. If you have the worst case scenario here is if somebody wins the rally but doesn't take maximum points, which is possible with the way this worked out now. Arguably, does that matter? I don't know if it does in a way. It's as long as everybody understands what's at stake and what's in play, then that's all that matters. I just think it's worth reiterating what Becs has said, and that I think it's great that something has been done, because it would have been easy to sit here and not try and focus it. I think everybody's been aware that it has been a problem. So something has been done about it. Whether it works, we'll find out. If it doesn't, I'm sure then there'll be a change. So that's the key thing for me, is that these things are now being discussed and are being implemented and are being thought about, which if we are wanting to boost the championship's health to the capacity we all know it can be at, then this is the kind of thing we need to be doing. We need to be brave enough to make these changes, and that's what's happened. So I guess, equally await Monte Carlo, we've got the different scenario of working out a Sunday. As Beck said, it probably will take a while to get used to, but it's like everything. When the Power Stage first came along, there have been a lot of people that turned around and thought this isn't going to work, and look at it now. So I think we do have to wait a few rallies and see how it works before we can have strong opinions either side of the fence, I'd say. Diplomatic again, that from me.
Oh, love that. I love it. But no, you are absolutely bang on. We have no idea at this point. And, what everyone out there, I guess, has got to remember is it's new to all of us. This has only really come in the last few weeks that has absolutely been signed off and decided. So trying to get your head around it now without actually seeing it in practice is pretty difficult. So let's see.
And I suppose just wrapping it up now, predictions for next year.
Luke, do you want to go first?
I like that, passing the buck. Yeah, he's caught us out there. Although, Connor, you haven't. I'm going to buy myself time to think about it. You've said predictions, but you haven't said predictions for what. So if I can have some more,
I left it open. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's actually a very good point, Miss Marple. Luke. You didn't say exactly what. Okay, so I will predict that Taka will win his first rally in 2024.
Okay, that's
I like
a good one.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm trying to think of something interesting now. Now, Beck's gone for a different angle. I will say, and it's a bit boring, but I think Toyota will still win manufacturers. Despite Hyundai's big lineup, I still think that's Toyota's. I'm not brave enough to go down the driver's route, but I don't think it'll be a driver in a Puma. We don't know who's driving a Puma at time of recording, so I'll say that.
Very brave of you. And I suppose it would be very remiss of us to finish off this without the Irish angle. There's talk of WRC Ireland 2025. It's not by no means a done deal yet, but I think it would be something that would be very welcome back in the championship days.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, I know a number of years that Northern Ireland, first up, was trying to get a deal together, and I know Bobby Willis worked extremely hard on that to try and make that happen. And now it's shifted base to potentially a rally in Ireland. And I'm hugely excited by it. I love rallying in Ireland, as you know. And I loved my time working on the Irish Tarmac Championship. So I know the kind of stages you have over there. And I think for WRC to come back and to be somewhere different, maybe down in the south, would be like further south, I mean, not just across the border, actually, down in,
geographically, yeah.
Who knows, County Cork, County Kerry, who knows, would be extremely exciting. There's a lot of fever behind it at the moment. There's a lot of chat, and I love to see that. And there would be a lot of fans that would attend that event. That is one thing for sure.
And look, your thoughts on it. You're a closet Irish rally fan as well.
Yeah, I'm not hitting it that well. In fairness, I've been one of these people that will always die on the hill that tarmac rallying is better than gravel, and it earns me a lot of hate, but I don't care. That's just my opinion. So if there's an extra tarmac rally in the championship, then great. If it's Ireland, then brilliant, because we all know how much passion there is for it. I think it would certainly be unique, which is again something we want. Speaking from a UK perspective as well, it's not a return of a GB, but it's the closest thing we're going to get for a while, I suspect. So that would be positive. And I think above all else, if we can look back to what we talked about at the start of the podcast, I think Ireland needs this. If I'm honest, there's been a lot of positivity anyway within the achievements of Will Crichton and things like that, but it's been a difficult year in general. So I think any kind of positivity to come back to the community in Ireland would be great. But yeah, I think it would certainly be a very unique challenge. But all new rallies are great, is another thing to say. So regardless of where it is, I'm all for it.
Kevin, really enjoyed the conversation we had with Becs and Luke, and you know, it was such a lovely reflection of Craig at the beginning of the conversation as well.
For sure, you know, like the way that Becs spoke about him, you know, you just know the affection that was there. And, you know, it wasn't just a one-way street, you know, there was obviously a great, you know, admiration for Becs from Craig as well, too, when you hear the stories.
Yeah, no, genuinely. And you know, when the time is right, it'd be nice to maybe have a podcast dedicated to Craig when, you know, when I think we're all in a position to talk about him properly and listen to what everybody has to say as well.
Yeah, because you know, Becs only touched on the surface of it, but you know, we still miss him to this day, you know, and but it's great that he's still in our memory.
Absolutely. Listen, exactly. It's good that we still remember him. Okay, and you know, again, thanks to Becs and Luke for taking their time, chat with us, and give us that a bit of insight. You know, it's lovely to get that behind the scenes information you wouldn't otherwise hear, or the thoughts you wouldn't otherwise hear. Yeah,
because that's what we've always said about the podcast. You know, we hope when we think that, you know, the people watching and listening to this, they know the results from the rally. You know, they have a fair bit of knowledge. What, you know, we're not going to be repeating, you know, who finished first, second, and third. We want to talk to the people that finished first, second, and third. Or, you know, the story behind the story, and it's always great to get these different insights on the sport as well.
That's it. It's bringing the background to, you know, what the engineers have to say, what the commentators have to say, what, you know, the co-drivers have to say, or the sponsors or the tire guys, whatever it is. It's bringing that piece of extra information that, you know, makes everybody that bit more knowledgeable about what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah. So that was the catch up with Becs and Luke. So until the next time, take care, speak soon, and bye.